Good morning. I hope everybody's enjoying the play so far, and I hope that we can get through break and have a good break and come back and pick up some of the comedy as we go here. I also hope that I can figure out all of the new tools they have suddenly put on this thing as I record, and so that I can use them and not distract myself with all the new toys. Um, Quick reminders: the Lear paper is due at 11:59 p.m. tonight. I'm going to try to get them done before Saturday, but it's break for me as well, so I'm feeling laziness coming on. The 7th, the 9th, and the 12th, we're doing 12th night, student presentation and quiz on the 12th. I hope by the 7th to have the papers over the comedies taken care of. The cumulative paper I will talk about, I think, after we're done with the comedies. And again, a quick reminder that we're going to do the quizzes over the 12th night, measure for measure, and Henry IV, and then I'm going to drop the lowest quiz grade. I've talked a lot of times about character, conflict, connection, and theme. A lot of you probably knew this already, but just a quick reminder that the movie She's the Man that came out in 2006, the movie Motocrossed, or the television show, I'm not sure, I think it was on Disney, that came out in 2001, and I'm not familiar with Motocrossed, also borrowed from Twelfth Night. But She's the Man. Notice there's a Duke, there's an Olivia, there's a Sebastian, there's a Viola, uh, there's a Monique, which could be a Mariah, and we've got all of these characters running back and forth. Here we were borrowing the name, and then we had the character dressing, taking the role as a guy, so she could play soccer, I believe. And look, there's no shipwreck, but a lot of the elements that come with the play are borrowed and used in the film. As we begin, I think it's important to think about some of the puns. Okay. And will you go hunt, my lord? And then we have the heart, and then we have the response, why, so I do, the noblest that I have. Oh, when mine eyes did see Olivia first, methought she purged the air of pestilence. That instant was I turned into a hart, and my desires like fell and cruel hounds e'er since pursue me. All right, so we play the pun on the heart. Heart, as in the heart that one loves with, versus Hart, which was a doe, female deer. It used to be, and before it was bucks and does, it was hinds and hearts. And notice the extended metaphor on the pun. The instant I turned into a hart, and like fell and cruel hounds, my desires pursue me. They're nipping at my heels. They're going to tear me to shreds, just the way dogs could tear a deer apart as one hunts it. And then the overblown, lovesick language about she purged the air of pestilence. In other words, she cures COVID. And I think it's important to understand that what we're dealing here with is somebody who's very, very over the top. And so when we have these conversations about Orsino, remember to take a look at what Cesario says and how those things are totally and completely more matter of fact. All right, I think that contrast is important. One of the things about Lear that I talked about was that it was hopelessness. This play begins with the idea of hope. My brother, he is in Elysium. The implication there is that he's dead. Remember that in Greek myth, Elysium was the place that the souls of the valiant went. When Odysseus went down to the land of the dead he visited the souls in Elysium. He didn't visit us normal, ordinary folk. He visited the souls in Elysium. But then the next thing we go to is perchance he is not drowned. And then the captain says, you yourself were saved. Perchance my brother might be saved. And then there's the story of Orion riding on the backs of dolphins, another mythological reference. And he's hanging on to the big chunk of wood. Perhaps he too can be saved. My own escape unfoldeth to my hope. I have hope. It's something we didn't have in Lear. And I think it's nice to come back to a play that gives us a little bit of hope, even though we're going to deal with the laughter and not the seriousness. And perhaps hope is always part of laughing. The other thing we talked about is disguise and identity. And we have, there is a fair behavior in thee, Captain. And though that nature with a beauteous wall doth oft close in a pollution. In other words, look, people who are good might be hiding something. Yet of thee I will believe thou hast a mind that suits. In other words, she's going to trust the captain. We have come through a series of plays where no one could trust anybody, or where people who were trusted seemed to prove that they should not be trusted, much to the detriment of the protagonists. Julius Caesar being the prime example, Othello and Iago. I pray thee, and I'll pay thee bounteously. Conceal me what I am, and be my aid. For such disguise as haply shall become the form of my intent, I'll serve this Duke. Thou shalt present me as a eunuch to him. It may be worth thy pains, for I can sing, and I will speak to him in many sorts of music that will allow me to be worth his service. I'm going to be a guy. I'm going to, try to come into the Duke's service. I'm trusting you to help keep my identity. And then the sea captain says he'll be a mute, he'll keep his mouth shut. But now we have the disguise. Conceal me what I am, I think is important, however, because we're going to deal with not just conceal me as somebody other than who I am, but conceal me as somebody far different than what I am. Conceal me as not being a woman. Conceal me as being a man. And then we're going to talk about character. We're going to talk about Malvolio a little bit later, but we'll start here with Sir Toby and Sir Andrew. Maria comes in and tells Sir Toby that, he needs to start coming in a little bit earlier. My lady takes great exceptions to your ill hours. And Sir Toby says, look, I'm going to drink. These clothes are good enough to drink in, and so be these boots too. And they be not, let them hang themselves in their own straps. I'm going to drink in my clothes. I'm going to party all I want. And then Maria talks about Sir Andrew. Sir Toby is revealing himself. He's telling us what sort of person he is. He's a partier. He's a drunk. He's taking advantage of his cousin. Maria is the one who directly tells us who Sir Andrew is. He's a fool. He's a great quarreler. He has the gift of a coward to allay the gust he hath in quarreling. 'Tis thought among the prudent he would quickly have the gift of a grave. In other words, if he didn't deal with people like Sir Toby, because he argues and because he's such a quarreler, he would probably be killed in a duel. And he's also very stupid and very wasteful. Please remember that the story of the prodigal son is not just the story of the kid who left and returned. The story of the prodigal son is the story of the prodigal, as in he was wasteful. Also, I think it's important here to talk about class. We've got this parallelism or this contrast between upstairs and downstairs, between the upper class and the lower class. She hath a heart of that fine frame to pay this debt of love, but to a brother. How will she love when the rich golden shaft hath killed the flock of all affections else that live in her, when liver, brain, and heart, these sovereign thrones, are all applied and filled? We're way, way, way over the top. Sir Toby Belch is saying he's tall, he's good looking, he's rich, marry him. The flowery, the over the top, the first world problem versus the common ordinary. Let's get him married off. He's rich and he's tall, as good looking as anybody else. And then we've got the gender thing. Cesario, who is, obviously not the guy. Dear lad, believe it. For they shall yet belie thy happy years that say thou art a man. Diana's lip is not more smooth and rubious. In other words, he doesn't have really a beard. Thy small pipe is as the maiden's organ, shrill and sound. In other words, the vocal cord, the voice is still high pitched. The voice hasn't changed yet. And all is symbolative of a woman's part. I know thy constellation is right apt for this affair. Some 4 or 5 attend him, all if you will, for I myself am best when least in company. Prosper well in this, and thou shalt live as freely as thy Lord, to call his fortunes thine. So we're sending the girl dressed as a guy to woo the girl for the guy. And you've got the big question. What can go wrong? And obviously, it's everything. Because I'll do my best to woo your lady. And then we've got the aside to the audience that sets up that we now know something. Remember, we talked about comedy being collaborative. The collaboration between the audience and the characters on stage is happening right here. We now know something that a whole bunch of characters don't, because Viola steps out and says, whoe'er I woo myself would be his wife. In other words, she has fallen in love with the Duke. She wants to marry the Duke, except, of course, the Duke knows she's a guy, which kind of complicates everything in Shakespeare's time in particular. And in fact, for half of your lifetimes, it complicated things here as well. And then that complication gets expanded when, Olivia falls in love with Cesaro. All right. Thy tongue, thy face, thy limbs, actions, and spirit do give thee fivefold blazon. Oh my God, this is the hottest human I've ever seen in my entire life. So, complication A, Cesario / Viola wants to marry the Duke. Olivia wants to marry Cesario, who's not a guy. Humor, I think, is also built in complications, and we didn't talk about that enough. I think one of the flaws we might have always had with Shakespeare, and one of the flaws I think I've had with Shakespeare, is that sometimes I take it too seriously. So today, because baseball season is going to open, I think tomorrow, I've got this whole little stupid comparison. Tongue, face, limbs, action, spirit, fivefold blazon. It just reminds me that the 5 tools for a baseball player: speed, arm strength, fielding ability, hitting for average, hitting for power. Cesario could speak well, was good looking, had a good enough build, all right, acted properly, had the proper spirit, had the 5 tools. It's a kind of a strange comparison. We're not going to get too serious. Let's go back to what we were talking about before, direct and indirect comparisons and direct and indirect characterization. On the indirect side, we see Malvolio. I marvel your ladyship takes delight in such a barren rascal. Look you now, he's out of his guard already. Unless you laugh and minister occasion to him, he is gagged. I protest. I take these wise men that crow so at these set kind of fools no better than fools, zanies, fool. In other words, look, he's not a good fool. I don't understand what everybody's laughing about. And Olivia nails him. You are sick of self-love, Malvolio. Now remember, we've got lovesick people all over the place, but we've got him sick of self-love. To be a generous, guiltless, and free of disposition is to take these things for bird bolts that you deem cannon bullets. In other words, look, it's just a bird giving you some bird droppings. It's not a cannon shooting shells at you. There is no slander in a loud fool, though he do nothing but rail, nor to railing is no indiscreet man, though he do nothing but reprove. In other words, chill out. Let the fool do his job. Let the fool make me laugh. I've lost my brother. I need some laughs. He's doing his job. And then finally, we've talked about fate. It was a big chunk of the Macbeth. It was mentioned in Julius Caesar. It's been mentioned, I think, in all the tragedies. But we see it here again. I do I know not what, and fear to find mine eye too great a flatterer for my mind. Fate, show thy force. Ourselves we do not owe. What is decreed must be, and be this so. In other words, please make it so that I can be fated to get the guy I want. After I've been holding everybody off, after I've been saying I'll never fall in love, please, dear fate, let me have Cesario. And remember the station thing, the fact that, he says he's been born in a higher station than he is now. Those sorts of things make him a worthy match. I think we'll wrap it up here. Whoops, I'm sorry. Daily writing. Which character do you find most interesting so far and why? Now we'll wrap it up here. Hope everybody has a good break, and we will see everybody next Wednesday.